From HanselMinutes.com, it's Hansel Minutes, a weekly discussion with web developer and technologist Scott Hanselman. This is Lawrence Ryan announcing show number 314, recorded live Tuesday, April 10th, 2012. Support for Hansel Minutes is provided by Telerik, offering the best in developer tools and support. Online at telerik.com. In this episode, Scott talks with his wife, Mo, about how to manage a mixed tech/normal marriage.
Hi, this is Scott Hanselman. This is another episode of Hansel Minutes. I have done 300 and something, 11, 12 shows, and to this day, after all my technical accomplishments, the most popular show that we have ever done on Hansel Minutes was talking to my wife.
Yay, it's my wife.
Hello, wife.
Hey.
So, the people have spoken. They are not interested in highly technical content or open source libraries. They want to talk to you.
That's super cool. Especially because...
Oh, the phone rings. Is that the phone I said to turn off?
I believe that's your phone.
That's not my phone. All right. Didn't I just tell you to turn your phone off? Okay. Yeah, so people want to hear from you.
That's cool. I was going to say before your phone rang that I always feel like I get called in when like Guthrie's not available or Phil Hack or Rob or any of those guys. So woohoo!
So
awesome to be on the show.
You're my second.
That's right. Yeah.
We were so we live outside of town, and we were driving in, and a couple of months ago, I want to say 6 months ago, maybe, you insisted that we go straight, and I wanted to turn right because turning right is the quicker way home. And you had said, no, I've been doing this other way. I drive this other way home. And I've been doing this for months, you told me. I'm like, what? What are you doing? Why would you go this way? And you're like, oh, well, there's fewer lights. And you described this way to get home that you were going. And I was showing you on the map that, and the word of the day that day was demonstrably. That way home is demonstrably slower.
Demonstrably. Write it down.
Okay. The argument started where you didn't agree that the map, what was the deal? Why would you not just accept that was not the quickest way home?
I love the fact that you're having trouble putting it into words in a diplomatic manner.
The issue is this. You said, no, you go down this street and then you turn right here, and it's like way faster. And I looked at the map, and it was almost like, I'm drawing this line like way down here and then way up here, and I'm like, it was an issue of, it wasn't even mapping, it was geometry. I'm just like, this is way out of the way. Why? Yeah. But you didn't want to hear about the map. I tried to show you the GPS map, and I said, look. And you said, I don't want to see your maps.
Well, look, I mean, I think you have two different people who are competent, who can get the job done. And by competent, I'm talking about myself. And, you're competent too in your own small way. No, we're two different people. And I think it's important for your listeners to understand that you and I are very similar people. We get the job done at the end, but it's the execution that always kills us because we always want to do it two different ways. We get to the same point at the end, but how we get there is very, very different. So all I was saying was, why not skip the lights? I mean, I think we're going from my sister's house home, which is about 42 lights in between. My recommendation was go ahead and avoid the lights and go the road that allows you to go 55 miles per hour with fewer lights.
The way with fewer lights.
Exactly.
Except that way, a cursory glance would show you was 17 miles southwest of where we were going.
Right. And again, not to rehash this issue.
No, people are deeply interested in this issue.
We've worked through this issue.
People are deeply interested in this issue.
Right. So my thinking was, because we're going significantly faster than if you go through the lights and you're going 35 miles per hour, doing the math will mean that at some point it's going to be faster to go 55 miles per hour than it is 35 miles an hour.
Right. So the problem that I was having, though, was that doing the math, even the cursory math, showed immediately that this was a problem. So what we ended up doing was Mo would go this way for months, and I would go the other way. until we finally found ourselves in a situation where we both were on that one side of town with 2 cars.
Right.
And we stopped at and I said, okay, here we are. We happen to be in,
Right behind each other.
right.
Yeah,
Let's go. You go straight. I'll turn right, and I'll meet you at home. And I got there 15 minutes earlier than you did.
That's
and
right.
you thought I was lying.
To be clear, you have been known to be generous, shall I say, in your use of the "I am here."
Well, whenever someone says,
anticipate.
whenever you're on the phone with someone, they say, well, where are you? You could either tell them that you're wherever you, like if you just passed something, you could like look to your right and say, I just
Right.
passed that. Or you could look as far forward in the horizon as possible
Exactly.
and then pick an exit that you can barely see
See,
just as
that's
the
it,
curvature
that's
of the
it. Yeah,
earth is
yeah.
coming up, and you could say, oh, I'm at that exit.
Right.
Because I'm basically there. I can see it.
Exactly. I'll be there in 10 minutes, really.
But in this instance, no, I got home and I told you I'm here. And it was about 13 minutes soon.
It
And
was
you
significant.
thought that I had used a wormhole or some teleportation device
Right.
to achieve this accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, I will say I was shocked, and I do not use that word lightly. I was shocked at how much faster you were.
Mm-hmm.
You were home when you said you were home, and I didn't see that.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that.
So the question is, and I think this is common in what I call mixed marriages, geeks and normals,
Right.
presuming you're the normal in this. Is that,
I am,
okay,
yes.
just checking. In geek relationships, I felt this was very, very logical. And it seems like when I refer back to a map or anytime I invoke the laws of physics, geometry,
Okay.
or the calculus
Okay.
in a conversation, I'm realizing now after 12 years of marriage that that's not working for you. Why?
Well, effectively, it's like you're not speaking my language. Look, if you're trying to communicate with your wife, whom you love more than anything else in this world, nod, as I say that, yes, nod, okay, you've got to be able to speak to me in a way that works for me. So I generally refer to that as speaking my language. What is it that you want? Well, you want to have a conversation with your wife. Well, you can do it one of 2 ways. You can say it in a manner that she will understand you and can engage in the conversation, or you can use Greek, which she doesn't speak. And when you're looking at me and saying, so are we heading northwest or what? And I say, well, we are by the Safeway. Do with that information what you will. And you're like, so is that east? I'm like, no idea. Just by Safeway.
Right.
That's
But what I think that sometimes geeks, nerds, dweebs, computer people have trouble understanding is that if we can't agree on the 4 directions,
okay.
you know what I mean? Like if we can't simply agree that that's north, and more specifically that north provides value, like the knowledge of north provides
Right.
value. So in this instance, I felt like it was a matter of I drew a line from point A, where we were, to point B, the house. And I drew the straightest line that I could. And you drew a line that like wildly flew off the page and then
Okay,
came back. It was
right.
a zigzag, kind of a lightning bolt, and then tried to.
But it was faster.
Well, it turns out it wasn't.
It turns out
But
it
you tried to
wasn't.
sell me what became frustrating is when I said, well, but this is where it got interesting. I said, the GPS says that it's like 15 miles longer. And you said, I don't care what the GPS says.
I believe what I said was, it's been known to be wrong before, which it has.
But then this is where we get into the computer mind, right?
Right.
It's right more than it's wrong. And I would say that the preponderance of evidence and the multi-billion-dollar GPS industry is on my
Right.
side. Why are you so, you always talk about having faith, that you have the faith that you know what you're doing and that you're competent and da. But in this instance, you were literally throwing against not only the face of logic and direction and the compass directions, but also the entire GPS community and the entire industry because it might have been wrong. Yeah, it could have been wrong. But I mean, that logic stuff doesn't work, right? I mean, like, but at the same time, apply that to when we go to dinner parties and stuff, and then all my logic doesn't work.
Right.
You know, you call this EQ versus IQ,
Right.
the emotional quotient. Like, what was the thing that I did at your brother's house with the kitchen?
Oh, well, which time?
Oh, the color of the kitchen.
Right, right. So we walked into my brother's house and he had repainted his house yellow. And you, in your infinite wisdom, said, yellow? I don't like that. It's too bright.
Well, I don't think I said it quite like that, but I said, wow, that's really very yellow.
And I don't care for it.
Did I really say that?
To that effect, yeah.
I don't know if I did quite say that. But the point was that it was exceedingly yellow. He must have known that it was yellow. I mean, it was hard to hear him speak because it was so loud.
That's right.
It was extremely yellow kitchen. And I didn't understand why that was a problem.
Well, again, I mean, it's the same thing I've said before, though. What is it that you're trying to accomplish here? Once you know what the answer to that question is, then you can sort of figure out how to get there, right? I think you were probably trying to say, hey, I noticed that you painted, right? And you're saying, hey, I noticed something's different.
Yeah, that's probably fair to say.
So there were other ways to have said that in a manner that was less, it was very direct, right? In a culture that is perhaps less direct. You go through that whole idea of saving face. Yeah, sure, it was bright. Yeah, sure, you didn't care for it. But, the African standard says you don't need to necessarily walk in through the door. And however nicely you say it, the underlying message was, that's bright. I don't care for it. It's not your house. A little thoughtfulness in that part. You were coming at it from the point of view as, hey, I'm giving you honest feedback, but it really landed like, wow. Okay, so here's a rude guy who just flew in all the way from the United States, and the second thing he says after "Hi, how are you?" is,
"Well, you're overselling it a little bit," but I hear you saying. Do you think that have you found any other engineers? Like we have other couple friends and stuff where there's an engineer, where the woman's an engineer, the man's an engineer. Is this a gender thing or is this an engineer thing?
No, that's pretty much a Hanselman thing. You can own that and feel good about it.
I'm being serious though. It's not just a handsome thing. I mean, come on. Do you think that this is my work feedback, like my work persona that's leaking into the personal life where it's like, let's take care of business. Let's come to a quorum and let's move forward with the next action item.
Well, sure. I mean, again, you've got to understand that it's a function of what you spend most of your time doing, right? To the extent that you're spending 8, 9, sometimes 10 hours, 12 hours a day working with engineers, people who think like you, right? It's a process in the manner that you process at the speed that you process. When you shift from that, we talked about this, I think, once before, where you almost need to decompress a little bit before you're fit for the rest of society. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's almost like it's a engineer technologist version of the bends, right? The bends are when you're deep underwater in a scuba tank, and if you come up too fast, you'll explode. So you got to come up real slow, and you got to throw a decompression chamber.
Exactly.
So maybe engineers need some kind of decompression chamber for them to realize that coming in and like I'll come out of the office because I work from home, and I'll go over, and then like maybe dinner's cooking, and I know you're making me sad now because I'm going to wince, but I'm like, is this what we're having? Or is that how you cook? Is there enough oil here? Are we cooking? And it's just like, I've immediately gone into like code review mode of the rice and meat that we're about to have.
Right. And I mean, I do that too, right? I spend a lot of time, say, with the boys, and they are busy. They are biting their nails. They're scratching each other. They're not listening. They're using their, loud voices. And I sometimes catch myself saying, inside voices, please. And I'm talking to you. And you look at me and you're like, wow, okay, that, how on earth is that applicable here? Well, I heard you saying something somewhat loudly, and I immediately went to Inside Voices.
See, that's really interesting. I'm glad that you actually are bringing up this issue here in a public forum. No, because I think it's interesting that I do get into that engineer mode, and that doesn't work for you. But at the same time, I think it's cool that you just recognize that sometimes you'll like, what did you yell at me about a couple of days ago?
Yell, such a strong word.
Lowercase y. The cabinets in the kitchen.
Right.
I open them, and then I walk away. But in my mind, I'll get to them. I'll close them later. But you want them closed immediately. That's the kind of thing you tell a 4-year-old.
Right.
But I'm a grown-ass man. I would like you. You know what I mean? But the question is then, especially when you have kids, who are we if I deal with engineers all day and you deal with 4-year-olds all day? Then we come back together, and I'm talking to you like an engineer, and you're talking to me like a 4-year-old.
Right.
How do we reconcile that kind of stuff?
Exactly. And it is hard. It is hard because, the audience that I'm working with and talking to has shifted. And if my brain doesn't shift fast enough, you can end up with, a mixture of those two worlds kind of blending into each other, where it's like, whoa, I'm talking to, 38-year-old Scott as if he's 4, and I'm talking to 4-year-old, T as if he's 30. I mean, it's about the benefit of the doubt, right?
And that is the thing that we have found. And actually, we're working on this book that continues to be worked on a year or two later. We'll talk about that in a second. But this idea of benefit of the doubt is so important. It's like being deferential. The idea that there's 6 billion people in the world.
Right.
But you're the one that I've decided to hang out with, or I guess you decided to hang out with me.
Lucky you.
Yes, I had no choice in the matter. I'm lucky you even talked to me at this point. But I'm on your side, and you're on my side. And to remember that is so important in any relationship. Because you come home and you're tired, and I come home and I'm tired. It's difficult to remember that I'm not here to make your life more difficult.
Right. It just seems that way sometimes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
How do you deal with that? I mean, do you feel that that's hard to remember?
Well, it is. I mean, and it depends on what's going on, right? When the boys are doing particularly well, it's like, oh, we have such beautiful babies. We are awesome, right? You feel good about that. It's particularly harder when there's a challenge or there's a compelling, there's a push against, oh, I think we should do this. And you're pushing back saying, no, not only should we not do that, that idea is ridiculous in the first place, not because you're saying those words. I just feel like you're saying that. So the idea that we are on the same team, I mean, we chose to be together. We chose to love each other and be together. And we're happy that way, even though it doesn't always look like it, at every waking moment. We're on the same side.
Well, and when you bring in kids to the situation or solving a problem like that, without getting into any specific, let's say that, you've got child number one and you think that child number one should do something this summer. And I think that that's not a good idea. Child number one's time is better spent doing something else. We're both, we can get into really animated discussions.
Animated, yes.
Animated discussions. You can get into lowercase a arguments about this kind of stuff. And then it can get nasty. But if you have to remember that we both love child number one and we want him to be successful.
Right.
But when you come to a, if you're not careful, one of us can get into the, well, you don't care about the kid enough, or you're not focused on his success.
Mm-hmm, right.
Those are the kind of things where I think the word, that term, the benefit of the doubt comes in. You've got to remember, not you, but one has to remember that we each love the child. We want him to be successful. We just differ on a particular implementation.
Exactly. As I said before, that for us, it's the execution of the stuff in the middle. I mean, we are very good on the theory. We agree. Yes, kids need to be educated. Education is awesome. Great.
Right.
How to do it is where we sometimes get into issues. But as you said, I mean, we both love our kids. We both want to see them succeed and thrive and be healthy and well. Mm-hmm. And even though the suggestions you have initially come across as really ridiculous and not thought out at all, and you are wrong.
I hope that I hope that your snark comes over on the
snark?
podcast.
What snark? We'll edit it right away. No, but what I do know to be true is you have the boys' interests at heart. You love them very much as I do. So it isn't always easy in the moment, mm-hmm. but to come back and kind of step away sometimes helps too. They say, I'm not at a place right now where I can really hear what you're saying, because as you speak, I have these ideas that are coming up in my mind and I lose your words to the picture I'm painting. So I'm going to separate myself for whatever,
give yourself a timeout.
Yeah. And just kind of think about it a little bit and then come back, because I do agree. It's the benefit of the doubt. We're on the same team. Right. We're working together. Yeah.
Well, and putting it into engineering terms for myself and for the listeners, the idea that we agree on the design, we agree on the vision, we agree on the mission statement, we differ on implementation.
Right.
And one of the things when I was working at Intel that they always reminded us about was the notion of disagree and commit. Right?
Exactly.
We've used that in our marriage, haven't we?
Right. Absolutely.
This idea that okay, I'm not 100% on board with this way, but I know that it will be fine in the end. It is an implementation detail that I don't like, but we'll achieve the goal. So I'm going to disagree, mm-hmm. but I will commit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the trick with disagree and commit is you don't get to complain about it.
Right.
Because if you don't, what happens? I told you so.
Exactly. And resentment,
And and that's one of the things that we talked about in the last show was that right. I told you so leads to resentment, and mm-hmm. resentment is the number one thing that will kill a marriage or a relationship.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. but you talked a little bit about the book. I think we should. That's an example.
Okay, yeah, that's a good example of
a
implementation.
quick one, but we can.
No, that's okay. That's a great. So we got this book that we talked about at the end of the last show,
Right.
and we were going to put it up on the web and start working on it. And we've got I think 5 or 6 chapters done.
Right.
So I went and put it online, not the book, but the intent to write the book
Right.
at a website called LeanPub. It's a publishing site.
Mm-hmm.
Because I thought about the book in terms of source code. I'm going to write it and I'm going to build it and people will be able to subscribe and watch it and I can get lots of feedback. And you thought,
I didn't think that. For me, the book was this awesome, warm and fuzzy project that Mo and Scott were going to work on. And it was just this intimate, great thing. And we were going to take our time and, write it, step away, come back, rewrite. So my vision was a lot softer, was a lot more laid back, was a lot more private, of the process than I think what you had in mind. So imagine my joy when you told me that you had, put up this.
it's just a 1-page informational site to collect interest on whether or not people wanted to read the book.
Exactly. So I didn't, to me, what I thought I heard was you saying, "Oh, I've created this website for the book," and I just thought, "Oh no, this is not the private, take your time, enjoy the process of it thing I had in mind."
But this is where I think we differed not only on implementation, but on vision. It's a book. Books are read by other people.
Right.
It's not a journal.
Right.
I didn't suggest that
It's
we
not a
write.
diary, yeah.
It's not a diary that we, it's not like the loving book that we'll just sit on the love seat and read about, to ourselves.
Right.
I presume there would be more than 2 people reading the book.
Right. Well, hopefully, right? Yeah.
But at the same time, my job, what I do is to execute.
Right.
And with this podcast or with stuff I do with Rob Connery or stuff I do at work, let's get it done.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I just did this. I didn't tell you this yet, but that productivity video that I did in New Zealand, that's up, and I'm giving it away, and it's just part of the web. Did it at WebStock, and everyone gets to listen to it, and it's great. Free love, right?
Mm-hmm.
Execute, right? Give a great talk, get it videoed. WebStock guys are awesome. They made it happen. They put it out there. So when the book idea came up, it's like, let's execute.
Right.
Let's see how quickly we can get a great book out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then, as they say in engineering, fail fast, right? If the book sucks, you get feedback, you update the book, and then you make it better. So I thought that we would be crowdsourcing ideas. Mm-hmm. And you were like, well, I don't know. This is for us. I don't care what the crowd says.
Right. I mean, again, for me, it was the journey. You have an efficiency, and you can be ruthlessly efficient and extremely effective at getting things done. I mean, between your family and my family, hands down, you are the number one person that we turn to when there's a problem and we need it handled, and everybody's thrashing and we
or
don't
a wedding video.
Exactly, a wedding video, whatever, we're thrashing, the left hand is saying this, the right hand is saying that, and there's just general confusion. You come in and you're able to a certain extent, almost isolate all the different voices and pluck what is important to each one and then synthesize those and come up with a plan.
But see,
that's awesome.
You're describing an engineer.
Right. But that is not what I wanted. That was not what I envisioned for the process.
Uh-huh.
For me, it was, as I said, a softer, it's the journey. We're going to enjoy this. Oh, wow. We're going to, sit under this apple tree as we write or whatever on a summer day type of thing.
A year and a half later, as I want to get like t-shirts made for the book.
Exactly.
We've got 5 chapters written.
Yeah.
We've got another 7 to do.
Right.
I'm thinking in my mind,
let's get it done.
I'm just thinking, let's get those chapters out there.
Right.
And I would go so far as to put words in the listeners' voices that the ones that are interested in the book would just like to see the book.
Right.
Or we could spend another year kind of dancing in a meadow and working on the book.
Right.
Can we find balance? That's such a completely different vision.
It is a complete, because, my pushback to that is, hey, what price do you put on quality? Right.
Well, $9.95.
Only you could put a price on quality.
It's $12.95, possibly Canadian, but
with shipping.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So,
are we writing a book or not? Right? It's not a pamphlet for family.
And what's wrong with dancing in the meadow? I'm just saying.
We can dance in the meadow in money. I don't.
Okay, so yeah, bringing your listeners back into this,
No, but my question is, how are we going to reconcile that? That's a great example of a family argument about a book about pause for it, solving arguments between geeks and regulars.
Well, again, I mean,
we just wrote a chapter of the book right there.
Right. Well, I mean, and then that's where you go back again to benefit of the doubt, working together, we're a team, and communication. I mean, right? How many times do you hear this all the time? You've got to talk to your partner. Know your audience is what I think I said that before, where I thought I knew what you wanted, right? I thought I knew.
And I totally thought I knew you wanted to write a book.
Exactly. So we were both kind of on the same page. We both said, oh, let's write a book. Yay. And it just fell apart after that sentence. The rest that followed from there was just completely.
Well, because I was like, okay, we're going to do it in Markdown and check it into Git. And you're like, wait a second, does that work in Word?
Yeah. I was like, is that Word or what is that? Yeah.
So this is the theory behind the book is relationships between regular folks. One of us is regular, and people who tend to be a little bit different. Do you think that I'm different built in, or do you think that this is because I'm an engineer and I've just done that? I've done that to myself.
Well, probably a bit of both, right? I mean, how on earth can one ever figure out why you're different? You just have that. Or
you're different from me. I don't know which one of us is different. The point is, though, we're different.
No, I think we're pretty clear on the nerd thanks. Here is the different one. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, though. We're in a mixed marriage for a number of reasons, though. Do you think that the computer person, normal person thing is a bigger deal than the cultural coming from different countries?
Yeah, I would say in our particular case, I'm sure it's different from each couple that is mixed and for more than one reason. In our particular case, because you are so much the engineer, just as who you are. And I am so much not the engineer, just as who I am. I mean,
well, you're very social, and you are the coordinator, and you're the organizer,
right?
At the emotional level,
right. And sometimes I value different things than you do. I remember, I think we've talked about this on one of your shows before. The first time that we traveled across the country together, right?
In 2001.
In 2000, I was. And I'm not going to.
2000.
I'm not going to point out that you got the year wrong. I'm going to let that go. How late was I to the flight? Right.
Oh my goodness. Sweet Lord.
I don't want to rehash the whole thing.
We have to rehash the whole thing.
Okay, here we go.
So
okay,
we were going across the country. It was going to be planes, trains, and automobiles, and our first flight was to Phoenix, and the flight was at 11. So I got to the airport at 9.
Right.
And the flight was at 11. And you got at the airport at 12:30.
Right.
At which point I was in a full-blown panic attack. I had pulled the and this was pre-September 11, so there was a little more agility that we had. But I had pulled the luggage off the flight and rebooked us on a 1:00 flight.
Right.
You showed up at 12:30.
Yeah.
We missed the 1:00 flight.
Mm-hmm.
I think we left at 7.
Because then the flight after that got canceled, and
then it was so because you didn't show up for the flight in the morning, and I showed up 2 hours early. That made us late, but me showing up early gave us the agility to get the stuff off the flight. We got there at like 9:00. It was nighttime when we got there.
It was.
It's a 12-hour flight to Phoenix.
Right. And for people who, don't know us very well, that just sounds like, wow, Mo, that's terrible. Why can't you keep time? Well, what was I doing? Right.
So that is the backstory.
Then you go back to the backstory.
You were at work.
Benefit of the doubt.
You were at work on your very last day of work, and you wanted to finish the work completely before you quit the job.
Right. So my last day of work was the day before, and then my boss needed something done. And
really?
Right.
This was an extra day of work for free that you gave your boss.
Well, it was just a few hours. But again, what's a few hours when you're supposed to be on a plane, right?
True.
But so for me, it was, I'm going to be traveling across the country with Scott. There's no real agenda. We don't have any hard goals. We're just traveling across the country. So I could give on that in my mind, as opposed to this thing that I knew was important for my boss. She would appreciate it. It would make her life easier after I was gone. It wasn't much of a choice for me. Do the right thing. And
But you didn't call me. So I sat.
Did we have cell phones back then? I don't know.
I'm pretty sure that the telephone system
has been around
longer than,
I know for a fact that I didn't have a cell phone at the time.
Yeah,
in
of course. But you could have figured out some way.
I could have found.
I mean, you wouldn't. Yes. It was 2000. So
I could have sent a dove or something.
A dove or some kind of, a raven.
Right. So coming back to the point though about cultural differences and
that was a work ethics versus being on time thing.
Right. What would you have done in that case? Your boss comes to you. You've decided, okay, I'm moving on, but there's this thing that he needs. Do you say, hey, my time is done and walk away? Do you say, hey, okay, I'll give you half of what it takes. I mean,
That's
what do you do?
That's a challenging thing. I think what I would have said, which I'm assuming you didn't, is I would have said, well, shoot, I have a flight. I'm not saying I wouldn't do it.
Right.
I would say I have a flight. And if the boss said, oh gosh, could I pay to have the flight moved an hour or two? Or could you move the hour or two? But you actually didn't even tell your boss that you had a flight.
No.
So you actually abstracted away the fact that you were going to be late for your plane, thereby putting our trip 12 hours late.
Right. And of course, I didn't know it was going to be 12 hours late.
No, I know.
In my mind, this
The
is
result,
a
the
fly.
result
We'll
was a
hop on the
cascading
next one.
failure.
A cascading
But
failure.
I'm less
Yes.
concerned about that, but the fact
Yeah.
that I was waiting at the airport,
Yes, yes.
which was no fun. But-
Distraught.
So,
yes.
so the difference there is that you swallowed the fact that we were doing that. You hid that fact from the boss, which was very noble, to be clear. But you would say that if I said to the boss, I got a flight, then I'm putting my burdens onto the boss and I'm stressing them out with my personal stuff. That the boss doesn't need that. He just needs his problem solved.
Right. I mean, I didn't even think about telling her. You said I hid that from the boss. I didn't hide it because in my mind, it wasn't even relevant to the issue. What did she want from me? She
But you
needed
got to
something
be
done.
somewhere is relevant.
Can I do it? Right. And I made a judgment. It's a judgment
Right,
call, right? As
exactly.
an adult, you decide and you suffer the consequences. My thought was, it's not that big a deal. We don't have a hard stop anywhere or hard start the next day. It's
Yep.
fine. We're just moseying along. Certainly.
I wish I had known we'd been moseying along.
Nobody told you that. You just thought
I
it was
would
going to be ruthless efficiency.
I
Go,
would
go,
have
go, go,
stayed
go.
home and then I would have come back later.
Exactly.
Because again, if I had known, I would have not shown up.
Exactly. And then you do run into that, your actions do impact other people. And what point do you have to consider
True.
the other person? Because certainly it was never meant to be disrespectful to you, right? So then you have to revisit that.
And I married you anyway.
And you married me anyway. Oh, you're a saint.
Oh, fantastic. Actually, we're at the end. We're at 30 minutes now. But I did want to ask one question. Why? I really like to be at the airport early. I try to get there an hour or two early. You think that it's an accomplishment to put your foot in the door as they're closing the door to the
Exactly.
to the airplane.
Yeah.
Just one more. Just one more.
She
Like,
made it. Woo!
that's like an achievement. You're like, awesome. I didn't wait a second. Where is that coming from?
And again, I don't know that this is going to be relevant to everybody. Look, my take on airports has been primarily very sad, right? For the longest time, I was in the United States by myself without my family. So I associated airports with leaving family. It was not a place that I think of fondly and be like, woohoo, I'm going to spend 4 hours waiting at the airport. It was almost always, I'm saying goodbye to somebody that I love, that I care about. Why on earth would I linger there? I mean, I don't want to spend a second longer than I need to. Your listeners will be thrilled to know that now that we have kids, I certainly don't do that. At least not nearly as much as I used to when I was single,
not in
because
the old days.
it's stressful on the kids. So, and now airports mean, half the time we're coming to meet you at the airport. So it's a happy.
You still
it's a
don't like to
happy-
go 2 hours early, though. Come on.
No, I still don't like that. And again,
You've never told me that before. I didn't know that you thought they were sad.
you just thought I was nuts. I just didn't
No,
like
I just
airports.
thought you liked being late.
Oh, benefit of the doubt.
Benefit of the doubt. Wow. The more you know.
The more you
Bum,
know.
bum, bum, bum. This has been another episode of Hansel Minutes. Thank you, small wife.
You're welcome, honey.
We'll see you again next week.